The chamber hummed with the low thrum of holographic displays, their blue glow casting long shadows across the polished obsidian floors of the Galactic Concord Central Hall. Ambassador Elara Voss stood at the podium, her fingers tracing the edge of the data slate holding Earth's final proposal. At 42, she was the youngest human ever appointed to this council, her dark hair pulled into a practical braid, her eyes sharp with the determination forged in the asteroid belts of the outer colonies. Beside her, Captain Marcus Hale leaned against a support pillar, arms crossed, his weathered face etched with scars from too many close calls in the void. He was the pilot of the Endurance, Earth's last diplomatic vessel, broad-shouldered and quiet, the sort who spoke more with actions than words. Across the vast circular chamber, the alien delegates shifted in their seats, towering Krell with iridescent scales, ethereal Lumari drifting like mist, and squat, pragmatic Vorith clicking mandibles in rhythmic impatience. The air smelled of ozone and alien spices, a reminder that this was neutral ground light years from any homeworld. Elara cleared her throat, her voice steady over the translation field. The United Planets of Earth submit that our contributions to the Concord's defense grid have exceeded expectations. We've mapped uncharted nebulae, provided shield algorithms that held against the Void Swarm, and supplied crews for joint operations. Triumph is not just declared, it's earned. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Krell emissary, General Theric, rose first, his voice a gravelly rumble translated into something almost melodic. Your ingenuity is noted, human. But the Council's declaration stands. Earth's triumphs are celebrated. Yet, in light of recent discrepancies in resource allocation, we propose a re-evaluation of your membership status. He paused, his multifaceted eyes glinting. Discrepancies. Elara knew what that meant. Whispers of Earth hoarding fusion tech, rumors of secret alliances with rogue traders. It was all fabricated, but in this hall, truth bent to the strongest narrative. Marcus shifted beside her, his hand brushing the concealed comm device in his pocket. He'd flown her here through pirate-infested lanes, dodging debris fields that would shred lesser ships. Now he watched the room like a hawk, ready to signal the Endurance if things soured. Elara met Theric's gaze. Reevaluation? We've bled for this alliance. Our people died in your wars. If triumph means anything, it means partnership, not exclusion. The Lumari delegate, a swirling form named Sylph, chimed in with a voice like wind chimes. Harmony requires balance, Ambassador. Earth's departure would allow recalibration. A graceful exit, honored in our annals. Departure. The word hung heavy, not a suggestion but a verdict cloaked in politeness. Elara's pulse quickened. They'd come to negotiate aid for the failing colonies back home. Droughts on Mars, failing reactors on Luna. Departure meant isolation, sanctions, the slow starve of a species cut adrift. As the vote tallied on the central holoscreen, 92% in favor of the recalibration, Elara gripped the podium tighter. Marcus leaned in, his whisper rough. We need to move. Council's rigged. I've seen the chatter on the black channels. She nodded, her mind racing. The Endurance waited in orbit, but leaving now meant abandoning the fight. Yet staying could trap them here, bargaining chips in a game they couldn't win. The session adjourned with formal bows and flickering lights, but the weight of the decision lingered like static in the air. Elara and Marcus slipped into a side corridor, the walls pulsing with embedded sensors. They're pushing us out to grab our tech, Marcus said, checking his scanner for tails. Heard the Vorith are salivating over our drive mods. Elara stopped, turning to him. Then we don't go quietly. We take the fight to them, expose the lies, rally the holdouts. Her voice held that spark, the human grit that had gotten them this far. But as alarms began to whoop softly in the distance, security protocols activating, she wondered if grit alone would be enough against an empire's tide. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge consoles a steady undercurrent to the tension coiling in her gut. The holographic display flickered before her, projecting the Alien Council's latest decree in shimmering blue script, translated imperfectly by the ship's AI, but clear enough in its intent. Triumph declared for the United Veil. Integration protocols commence immediately. She glanced at her first officer, Marcus Hale, whose jaw was set like forged steel, his eyes scanning the same feed with the quiet fury she knew too well. "They're not even pretending anymore," Marcus muttered, leaning closer to the holo. His voice carried the gravel of too many sleepless nights, but there was no panic in it, just the calculated edge of a man who'd outmaneuvered blockades before. Ilara nodded, her fingers drumming a silent rhythm on the console. The crew around them, Lieutenant Kira Novak at navigation, sharp-eyed and unflinching, and Engineer Tomas Ruiz monitoring the engines from his station, waited for her word. Small team, tight bonds. That's how humans survived out here, not with grand fleets but with grit and glue. The challenge had escalated overnight. What started as diplomatic overtures from the Vales Council, those ethereal, tentacled bureaucrats who claimed dominion over half the galaxy, had twisted into outright demands. Their triumph was code for absorption. Earth's tech, its people, folded into their collective like so many conquered worlds. Refusal meant isolation, blockades on trade routes, whispers of engineered shortages back home. Real stakes, not abstract threats. Ilara's mind flashed to the reports from Sol, ration power grids, families scraping by. No evil overlords here, just a sprawling bureaucracy that saw humanity as a useful anomaly to be catalogued and controlled. "We jumped to the outer rim," Ilara said finally, her voice cutting through the hum like a knife. Short, decisive. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He'd seen her pull off riskier calls. Kira's fingers flew over her panel, plotting the course through the nebulous treacherous currents, glowing tendrils of gas that could fry sensors if you miscalculated. Tomas grunted approval from engineering, his hands already coaxing more power from the fusion core. Humans didn't conquer with sheer force. They adapted, improvised, turned the environment's teeth against itself. But as the ship, the Odyssey, shuddered into warp, the first glitch hit. Alarms blared, sharp, insistent, and the holo sputtered, replaced by a cascade of error codes. "Veil interference," Tomas reported, sweat beading on his brow. "They're jamming our NAV buoy. Early plans toast, we're blind in the nebula." Ilara's plan had been simple. Slip through the uncharted fringes, link up with scattered human outposts, rally a quiet exodus before the Council's envoys arrived. Now, with sensors dark, one wrong drift could mean collision with asteroid debris or worse, a Veil patrol sniffing their trail. Marcus straightened, his wit surfacing like a lifeline. "All right, old school it is. Kira, dead reckoning, use the star patterns like we did on that smuggling run to Vega." She smirked, the cautious edge in her eyes sharpening to focus. No lectures, just action. They dimmed non-essential lights, rerouted power to manual scopes, and Ilara took the helm herself. The nebula loomed on the view screen, a swirling vortex of violet and gold, its beauty a deadly veil. One striking image burned in her mind, the faint outline of a gas giant's rings, fractured light bending through the haze, a reminder that space didn't yield easy triumphs. Hours blurred into a tense rhythm. Arguments flared briefly, Marcus pushing for a risky shortcut, Tomas warning of engine strain, but they settled it with data, not egos. Ilara steered by instinct honed from years charting unknown voids, her hands steady on the controls. The ship groaned as they skirted a plasma storm, sparks dancing across the hull like fleeting fireflies. Cost was immediate. A power surge fried secondary shields, leaving them vulnerable. Lingering consequence, she thought, but better than surrender. As the nebula's edge neared, a ping echoed, not Veil but human. A faint signal from the outpost on Epsilon Eridani. "We've got a window," Kira announced, her voice laced with relief. Ilara allowed herself a breath, the camaraderie settling like shared oxygen. Triumph wasn't declared by councils, it was carved out in moments like this, one clever dodge at a time. But the signal carried urgency. More ships inbound, Earth's quiet departure accelerating. The stakes had just risen. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they punched through the outer rings of the Zirian belt. The asteroid field stretched like a graveyard of shattered worlds, jagged rocks tumbling in lazy orbits under the distant glare of a binary star system. Her crew, 3 humans, all that remained of the original survey team, huddled in the cramped cockpit, their faces lit by the flickering consoles. Shields holding at 80%, murmured Jax, the engineer, his fingers dancing over the controls. He was the cautious one, always double-checking readings, his brow furrowed under a mop of unkempt hair. A scar ran down his cheek from an earlier mishap on Vega Prime, a reminder that space didn't forgive haste. Elara nodded, eyes fixed on the scanner. The external challenge had hit them hard. A sudden ion storm had fried their primary NAV system 2 days back, stranding them in this debris-choked sector. No comms to the fleet, no way to plot a clean exit. The stakes were real, oxygen reserves dipping low, and one wrong maneuver could turn their shuttle into scrap. They weren't heroes in some grand saga, just survivors piecing together a fix. "Any luck on that jury rig?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Brave wasn't bravado for Elara, it was the quiet resolve that kept her pushing when others faltered. Jax wiped sweat from his forehead. "Patched the secondary array, but it's glitchy. If we thread the needle between those 2 big rocks up ahead, we might slingshot out. Risky though. One bump and we're venting Atmo." Lena, the witty medic tucked into the jump seat, snorted softly. She adjusted her medkit strap, her quick grin belying the tension in her shoulders. "Thread the needle? Sounds like your love life, Jax. All promise, no follow-through." He shot her a glare, but it cracked into a reluctant chuckle. Camaraderie like that had kept them sane through worse. No speeches about unity, just the easy ribbing that cut through fear. The shuttle bucked as a micrometeor pinged off the hull. Elara's plan from the storm's aftermath, reroute power to the thrusters for a burst escape, had backfired spectacularly. The overload had scorched the conduits, leaving them limping. Now adaptation was key. "All right, new play," she said, leaning forward. "We use the belt's gravity. Jax, a line for a slingshot around that cluster at bearing 247. Lena, monitor life support. If it dips, we seal off the cargo bay." They moved as one, a well-oiled unit forged in the fires of too many close calls. Jax's hand steadied on the yoke, plotting the curve with painstaking care. The rocks loomed larger, a colossal boulder the size of a frigate blotting out the stars, its surface pocked and unforgiving. Tension coiled in the air, thick as the dust motes swirling in the vents. Elara felt the pull, the inexorable tug of the asteroid's mass yanking them closer. "Hold it together," she whispered, more to herself than the team. The shuttle whipped around the curve, engines flaring in protest. Alarms blared, a glancing hit from a stray fragment sheared off a sensor array, sparks flying across the dash. Jax cursed, wrestling the controls as they spiraled. Compensating. "Come on, you stubborn beast." Lena braced against the bulkhead, her voice sharp. "O2 at 75%. We can't take another hit like that." Elara's mind raced, grit pushing past panic. Human ingenuity wasn't about miracles, it was scavenging solutions from scraps. "Vent the forward ballast, use the recoil to steady us." Jax punched the command without hesitation. A whoosh echoed through the hull, the shuttle righting itself just as they cleared the cluster. The belt fell away behind them, the binary stars swelling on the view screen like beacons of hard-won freedom. But victory tasted bittersweet. Scans showed the damage. Their FTL drive was toast, at least a week's repair in drydock. And in the comm static, a faint signal pierced through, council chatter about the Xerian claim, their survey data now the only leverage Earth had left. Departure loomed larger, a consequence they couldn't outrun. As the shuttle coasted into open space, Elara exhaled, the weight settling. They'd adapted, survived. But the stars ahead whispered of tougher choices still to come. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavor's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cocoon of soft blue lights and holographic displays, but the air felt thick with unspoken doubts. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Ren, ever the cautious one, scanned the sensor readouts with furrowed brows, his fingers dancing over the console. Across from him, Dr. Mira Singh leaned against the bulkhead, her witty smirk hiding the exhaustion in her eyes. They were a trio forged in the fires of a dozen skirmishes, Elara's bravery pushing them forward, Kai's prudence keeping them alive, Myra's sharp tongue cutting through the fog of uncertainty. The Alien Council's transmission had come in just hours ago, a grand declaration of triumph from the United Galactic Accord. Their emissary, a towering figure of iridescent scales named Zorith, had proclaimed victory over the void storms that plagued the Outer Rim. Humanity's contributions have tipped the scales, the message intoned, holographic banners unfurling in simulated glory. But Elara knew better. The storms weren't beaten, they'd merely shifted, coiling like serpents around Earth's departure vectors. The Council wanted the credit, the prestige, while humanity prepared to slip away from the alliance that had grown too possessive. "Captain," Kai said, his voice steady but laced with warning, "the storm front is accelerating. If we don't reroute, it'll shear off our nacelles before we hit the jump point." He pulled up a projection, swirling chaos of plasma and gravitic distortions, a wall of fury that made the stars blur. Elara nodded, her jaw set. She'd led scavenging runs into worse, but this was no salvage op. Earth was evacuating, colonies folding under economic sabotage disguised as shared burdens. The Council's triumph was a mask for their control, and departure was humanity's quiet rebellion. "Mira, talk to me. What's the Endeavor saying?" The doctor straightened, rubbing her temple where a faint scar from their last close call gleamed under the lights. "Engines are at 87%. That jury-rigged bypass from the derelict we snagged is holding, but it's thirsty. One surge from the storm and we're nursing a meltdown." She paused, her eyes flicking to Elara. "We could hail the Council for escort. They've got the firepower. And hand them our itinerary?" Elara shot back, rising to pace the narrow bridge. "No. We plot our own course. Kai, isolate the weaker eddy, they're the one shearing off from the main front. If we thread it tight, we might slingshot through." Kai hesitated, his cautious nature warring with loyalty. "It's a gamble. Models show a 40% chance of structural failure. The hull plating will hold," Elara interrupted, her voice firm. "Like it held when we pulled you out of that wreck on Vega Prime." She met his gaze, the memory flashing between them, debris raining, her suit jetting through the void to snag his tether. He exhaled, nodding. Adjusting course. Engaging maneuvering thrusters. The ship groaned as it banked, the storm's edge clawing at their shields. Alarms chirped softly, a staccato rhythm that quickened pulses. Mira strapped in, muttering, "If we fry, at least it'll be on our terms. Better than bowing to those scale-brained bureaucrats." Elara watched the viewscreen, the plasma tendrils reaching like fingers. An early probe they'd launched flickered out, its signal lost in the maelstrom, a stark reminder of the cost. But as the Endeavor dove into the eddy, the ship shuddered and held, humanity's grit bending the chaos to its will. For now. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through her bones like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with static, revealing glimpses of the nebulous swirling chaos, a graveyard of shattered asteroids and ionized gas that clawed at their shields. Her team, huddled in the dim bridge light, waited for her signal. Beside her, Dr. Kai Rin, the xenobiologist, adjusted his scanner with fingers still smudged from the earlier repair frenzy. Across from him, Lieutenant Mira Torres, ever the sharp-eyed navigator, traced escape vectors on her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before that plasma surge hits," Kai said, his voice steady but laced with the caution that defined him. He glanced at Elara, his dark eyes reflecting the screen's glow. "The Council's beacon is still transmitting, but it's weak. If we push closer, we risk the hull." Brave didn't mean reckless. It meant calculating the odds and betting on the team. "Mira, reroute auxiliary power to forward deflectors." "Kai, any sign of the away team?" Myra's fingers danced over the controls, short bursts of commands syncing the ship's rhythm to her will. "Done." "But Captain, that surge is accelerating. It's like the nebula's alive, feeding on our emissions." Kai's scanner beeped, a sharp trill cutting the tension. "Life signs. Faint but human. They're in the derelict station, Sector 7. The one the Council marked as lost." The derelict loomed in Elara's mind, an ancient alien outpost, abandoned after the war that birthed this very nebula, a cataclysmic clash between rival fleets that scarred the stars. The Council had declared it a triumph, a contained victory over the aggressors, but Earth had always whispered doubts. Now with their probe team trapped inside, those doubts screamed. Resource shortage was the least of it. Losing Ramirez and the others meant losing the data that could prove the Council's triumph was a lie, a cover for something far worse. Helm, adjust course. We're going in. Ilara's words hung firm, no room for argument. The ship groaned as thrusters fired, slicing through the nebula's fringes. Tendrils of purple gas licked the hull, sparking against the shields in fleeting bursts of light. Kai leaned forward, his wit surfacing like a shield of his own. You know, if we pull this off, the Council might finally admit humans aren't just good for grunt work. Or they'll blame us for the mess. Mira snorted, a quick laugh escaping despite the strain. Blame? They'd declare it another triumph and slap our names on a plaque back home. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring as the first wave of plasma crested. Ilara's hands flew to the overrides, stabilizing the core manually, a trick she'd learned from old Earth sims, when ingenuity meant survival without alien tech. Sparks danced across the console, but the shields held, a thin blue veil against the onslaught. Proximity alert, Mira called. Station in visual range. But Captain, it's venting atmosphere. Whatever hit them, it's structural failure on a massive scale. Ilara's gaze locked on the screen. The station twisted like a wounded beast, its spires fractured, hull plates peeling away into the void. One striking image burned into her. A single light flickering from within, defiant against the dark. A signal from Ramirez perhaps, or just the last gasp of failing systems. It pulled at her, the cost already mounting in frayed nerves and flickering readouts. Kai prepped the docking clamps. Mira, find us a seal. We're not leaving without them. Ilara stood, her movements precise, channeling the grit that had carried Earth through worse. The nebula roared closer, but in that moment the bridge felt smaller, tighter. A bubble of human resolve amid the stars' indifference. As they closed in, a calm crackle pierced the noise. Voss, Surge, Data Core, it's not what they said. Ramirez's voice, fragmented, carried the weight of revelation. The Council's triumph? A departure from truth, and now Earth would force the reckoning. The clamps engaged with a metallic thud, the ship latching onto the station's trembling frame. Ilara grabbed her toolkit, signaling the team. Suit up. Time to adapt or die. Inside the airlock, the pressure equalized in hisses and pops, the cold bite of recycled air seeping through their suits. Kai checked seals with methodical care, while Mira synced her visor to the station's fading grid. Breaches ahead, she warned. We'll need to cut through. Ilara led the way, plasma torch igniting in a blue arc. The corridor beyond was a tomb of twisted metal and floating debris, emergency lights pulsing like dying heartbeats. They moved in sync, boots magnetized to the floor, each step echoing the stakes. Not just rescue but uncovering why the Council had buried this place. A bulkhead groaned, buckling under the nebula's pull. Kai shoved Ilara aside just as a shard of hull whipped past, embedding in the wall with a spark. Watch it, structure's failing faster than we thought. Thanks, she muttered, steadying him. No time for more. Ramirez's beacon pulled them deeper. In the core chamber they found him, slumped against a console, suit torn but alive. Data streams flickered on the screens. Logs of the war, not a clean victory but a desperate alliance hiding mutual atrocities. The aggressors weren't defeated. They'd been quarantined here, their tech awakening the nebula itself. Captain, Ramirez rasped through his helmet. Calm, the Council knew. This surge, it's them breaking free. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her shuttle's co-pilot seat, the hum of the engines vibrating through her bones as they punched through the asteroid field's edge. Beside her, Dr. Lyric, the avian diplomat from the Zorith Collective, pecked at his datapad with a beak that clicked in agitation. His feathers ruffled, a sure sign of nerves. Feathers didn't lie like human faces could. In the back, Jax Harlan, the burly engineer with grease-stained hands and a perpetual squint, tinkered with a jury-rigged scanner, muttering curses under his breath. Those rocks are denser than a bureaucrat's skull, Jax said, not looking up. If we hit one at this speed, we're confetti. Elena shot him a glance in the rear view. Then keep that scanner honest. We need eyes on the relay station before the Council's goons do. The relay was key, the hidden comms hub that Earth had built in secret, a lifeline for their departure fleet. The Council's triumph declaration had been a smokescreen, a way to claim victory over the Void Swarm while sidelining humanity's contributions. But Earth wasn't staying for the applause. Departure meant cutting ties, and this station held the codes to make it clean. Lyric's wings twitched. The collective owes you this, Elena. But if we're caught, my people will disavow me. The Council sees humans as unpredictable. Unpredictable? Elena smirked, banking the shuttle left to dodge a tumbling boulder the size of a truck. That's our edge. She'd always been the brave one, charging into the unknown while others debated. Jax was the grit, fixing what broke with tape and tenacity. Lyric brought the wit, his sharp insights cutting through alien politics like a laser. The scanner beeped, a faint signal ahead, masked by the field's interference. Jax leaned forward. Got it? Station's holding but power's flickering. Looks like swarm residue corroded the outer hull. Elena nodded, her mind racing through contingencies. The plan was simple. Dock, upload the departure protocols, and ghost out before patrols arrived. But nothing in space stayed simple. As they closed in, a shadow detached from the larger asteroids, a Council interceptor, sleek and predatory, its engines flaring blue. Damn, Jax growled. They're early. Lyric's eyes widened, pupils dilating to black pools. Hail them? Bluff. No time. Elena slammed the throttle, weaving through the debris. The interceptor fired a warning shot, the beam sizzling past their wing. Alarms wailed inside the shuttle, red lights painting their faces. Shields at 60%. Jax yelled, slamming panels to reroute power. Sparks flew from his console. Elena gritted her teeth, pulling a tight spiral that grazed a spinning rock. The G-forces pinned them to their seats, Lyric's feathers standing on end. Hold on. We're not handing them the keys to our exit. The interceptor pursued, matching their evasive dance. Elena's hands flew over the controls, drawing on every sim she'd run back on Earth. Ingenuity born of necessity, not endless resources. She spotted a cluster of microasteroids, a natural choke point. Jax, can you pulse the engines? Fake a malfunction? He grinned all teeth. On it. A burst of exhaust vented, clouding their trail. The interceptor hesitated, scanners blinded for precious seconds. Elena dove into the cluster, the shuttle shuddering as fragments pinged off the hull. Lyric K clutched his perch, whispering Zorith prayers. They burst through the other side, the relay station looming, a battered sphere etched with human welds and alien scripts. Docking clamps engaged with a clang. Elena unstrapped first, grabbing her toolkit. 2 minutes tops. Lyric, cover the comms. Jax with me. They cycled the airlock, the station's dim lights flickering like a dying heartbeat. Inside, conduits sparked, swarm acid eating through insulation. Jax knelt by the core, splicing wires with practiced hands. This baby's on life support. One wrong move and poof, data's gone. Elena monitored the external feed, the interceptor circling back. Tension coiled in her gut, but she kept her voice steady. Talk to me, Jax. Almost there. His fingers danced, connecting a bypass. The core hummed to life, screens blooming with code. Departure protocols uploaded, Earth's ships now invisible to Council trackers. A thud echoed from the outer hatch. Lyric's voice crackled over the intercom. They're boarding. Security team, 3 strong. Elena sealed the upload, heart pounding. Evac now. They sprinted back, Jax sealing the core behind them with a hasty weld. In the airlock, blaster fire scorched the door. Elena vented a smoke grenade, human surplus, thick and choking. Coughs echoed outside as they undocked, thrusters firing hot. The shuttle lurched free, the interceptor's shots grazing their tail. Elena punched it toward the field's heart, using the rocks as cover. Jax whooped. We did it. Fleet's clear. But Lyric stared at his pad, feathers drooping. The Council's signal, they're mobilizing. Your departure just became a hunt. Elena glanced back, the station shrinking in the viewport. A small victory, but the cost was etched in the scars on their hull. Earth was leaving all right, but the galaxy wouldn't forget. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endurance's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cocoon of flickering holograms and soft blue lighting, but the air felt thick, charged with the unspoken weight of the Council's latest decree. Her crew, Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual smirk, Lena, the sharp-eyed navigator whose caution bordered on paranoia, and Tomas, the stoic medic who said little but saw everything, huddled around the central console, their faces illuminated by the glowing star map. "We've got 3 hours before the departure window closes," Jax muttered, his fingers dancing over the interface. A schematic of the ship's fusion core spun lazily in the air, red warnings pulsing like wounds. The Council had declared triumph over the Xerian blockade, hailing humanity's ingenuity as the galaxy's salvation, but for the Endurance, it meant abandonment. Earth was pulling out, leaving the frontier colonies to fend for themselves against the resource-starved raiders who'd been nipping at their heels for months. Lena leaned in, her voice a low hiss. "If we reroute power from life support, we might squeeze another jump out of her. But that's playing with fire, Cap. One glitch and we're breathing vacuum." She shot a glance at Tomas, who nodded once, his eyes scanning the vitals feed. No one argued. They'd all seen what happened to the last ship that pushed too hard, drifting hulks, silent graveyards in the void. Ilara's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their failed evasion plan from the asteroid field. The raiders had adapted faster than expected, their scavenged tech jamming the Endurance's sensors just as they'd lined up for the slipstream. Now, with Earth's fleet recalling every vessel for strategic redeployment, they were on their own, a lone spark in the gathering dark. She straightened, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "Jax, isolate the auxiliary thrusters. Lena, plot a slingshot around that gas giant, use its gravity to mask our signature. Tomas, prep the med bay for potential overloads. We're not leaving those colonies to die." Jax chuckled, though it lacked humor, wiping sweat from his brow. "Triumph my ass. Earth's celebrating while we're the cleanup crew." He keyed in the commands and the ship groaned in response, metal protesting as power surged. Alarms blared briefly, a cascade failure in the shielding, before Tomas slapped an override, his hands precise, unyielding. As the Endurance lurched toward the giant's swirling storms, a shadow flickered on the long-range scan, raider signatures closing fast. Ilara's pulse quickened, but she forced calm into her tone. "Hold course. We've got grit on our side, they're just hungry." The crew moved as one, a rhythm born of shared peril, the gas giant's banded clouds looming like a promise of temporary reprieve. Yet in the back of her mind, the Council's words echoed hollow: triumph for some, departure for the rest. And for them, survival hung by the thinnest thread. Elena gripped the armrest of the shuttle's command chair, her knuckles whitening as the viewport filled with the swirling chaos of the nebula's edge. The ship shuddered, engines whining against the gravitational pull of the collapsing star at its heart. Marco hunched over the console beside her, sweat beading on his forehead, fingers flying across the holographic controls. "We're not gonna make it through the thin spot," he muttered, voice tight. "The readings are spiking, another surge like that and we'll be spat out in pieces." She shot him a glance, forcing steadiness into her tone. "We've got no choice. The Council's fleet is right behind us. If we veer off, they catch us and it's over. Earth's declaration means nothing if we're all in chains." The alien emissary, Kale from the Verdant Collective, floated in the co-pilot's nook, his bioluminescent tendrils flickering with unease. He had insisted on joining them after the tribunal, swearing loyalty to humanity's unyielding spark, but now doubt clouded his multifaceted eyes. The shuttle bucked violently, alarms blaring as a plasma tendril lashed out from the nebula, scoring the hull with a screech of melting alloy. Elena yanked the yoke, dodging the worst of it, but the inertial dampeners faltered, slamming them all against their restraints. Marco cursed in Spanish, rerouting power from life support to shields. "That's buying us seconds, not minutes. We need a way to punch through, use the nebula's own currents against it." Kale's tendrils pulsed brighter, an idea forming. "The gravitational eddies, they follow patterns like the tidal flows of my world's oceans. If we sync the engines to their rhythm, we could ride them instead of fighting." Elena nodded sharply, her mind racing through the calculations. Humans had mapped worse anomalies back home, jury-rigging probes from scrap during the early colony pushes. Marco, can you isolate the frequency? He grinned through the strain, the wit surfacing like a lifeline. On it, Cap. Just don't expect me to dance to it. As he patched the readings into the thrusters, the shuttle dove into the nebula's maw, colors bleeding across the stars like watercolor on wet paper. The first eddy caught them, twisting the ship into a barrel roll that pressed Elena's vision to spots. But then, alignment, the engines hummed in sync and they surged forward, the chaos parting like a curtain. Behind them, the Council's interceptors faltered, their rigid formations crumbling against the unpredictable flow. One vessel cracked apart in a silent bloom of debris, a stark reminder of the cost. Elena exhaled, easing back on the controls as the nebula's far side loomed clear. We're through. But they've got our vector now. Earth's exodus window just narrowed. Marco slumped, wiping his brow, while Kale's glow steadied, a silent vow renewed. The stars ahead stretched vast and unforgiving, humanity's path now a solitary thread in the void. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, the metal cool against her palms despite the rising heat in the bridge. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights painting the faces of her crew in flickering crimson. Marcus hunched over the console, his fingers flying across the holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead. The warp core's destabilizing, he muttered, voice tight but laced with that familiar edge of sarcasm. Whoever rigged this knew exactly what they were doing, it's like they read our manual and laughed. Alex paced behind them, his diplomatic robes disheveled, eyes darting to the view screen where the alien fleet loomed like shadowed monoliths against the nebula's glow. We can't fight them head-on. The Council's declaration was a trap. They never intended triumph for us. If we don't respond soon, they'll board and claim the ship as spoils. His words carried the weight of caution, each syllable measured, but Elena caught the tremor beneath. She nodded, forcing her gaze away from the encroaching vessels. The plan had been simple. Slip through the blockade using the nebula's interference to mask their signature, deliver the counter-proposal to the neutral outpost, and force the Council's hand. But the sabotage, likely from the embedded spy they'd suspected, had backfired spectacularly. The initial evasion maneuver overloaded the shields, and now the core was a ticking bomb. Options, people. We adapt or we die trying. Marcus slammed a fist on the console, the impact echoing. I can reroute power from life support to stabilize the core, buy us maybe 20 minutes. But it'll get cold fast, real cold. And if the aliens scan us, they'll know we're limping. He glanced at Elena, his witty grin faltering for a split second, revealing the grit that had kept him alive through a dozen crises. Your call, Captain. Heroic freeze or slow roast. Alex stopped pacing, leaning in. Use the distress beacon. Hail the outpost directly. If we frame it as a mutual threat, Council aggression spilling over, they might send aid. It's risky, exposes our position. His cautious nature shone through, weighing alliances like a merchant's scales, but there was fire in his eyes now, born of the stakes pressing in. Elena waited, the hum of the ship vibrating through her bones. Outside, a tendril of nebula gas curled like a predator's tail, the first alien probe darting into view. Lives hung on this, her crews, the colonies back on the fringe world, even the fragile piece they'd clawed from the Council's jaws. Do both, she said finally, voice steady. Marcus, start the reroute. Alex, send the hail, but encode it with the contingency protocol. If they bite, we pivot to the outpost. If not. She trailed off, the unspoken clear. Departure meant abandonment, Earth pulling back from the stars they'd claimed. As Marcus initiated the sequence, the lights dimmed, air recyclers whining to a halt. Frost began to rim the edges of the view screen, a crystalline web spreading like doubt. Alex transmitted the message, his fingers trembling slightly on the controls. The response came swift, a crackle of static, then the outpost's voice, wary but intrigued. Human vessel, state your intent. The Council watches all. Elena leaned forward, her breath fogging the air. Intent? Survival. And a reminder that triumph isn't declared, it's taken. The words hung, earnest in the chill, as the first enemy ship closed the gap, weapons priming with a distant hum that promised consequence. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the control room, casting long shadows that danced like specters on the bulkheads. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the worn metal. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear, never from fear, but from the raw exertion of holding the ship together with sheer will. Around her, the hum of failing systems buzzed like a swarm of angry insects, punctuated by the occasional groan of straining hull plates. "Status on the core?" she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos without raising in pitch. It was a trait her crew admired, calm under fire, the kind of steady that anchored them all. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the engineer with a perpetual grease smear on his cheek and a wit sharp as a laser cutter, wiped his brow with a rag that had seen better days. Containment's holding at 60%, Cap. But the flux from that council pulse is eating through the relays like acid. If we don't reroute power soon, we'll lose auxiliary life support. Elena nodded, her dark eyes scanning the holographic display that flickered erratically. The Alien Council's triumph declaration had been nothing short of sabotage, a massive energy wave disguised as a diplomatic broadcast, slamming into Earth's departure fleet like a cosmic hammer. Their ship, the Vanguard, was the lead vessel, carrying the last diplomats and scientists willing to negotiate humanity's exodus from the galactic fold. But negotiation had turned to betrayal, and now they were limping through the void, one jump drive short of escape. From the navigation station, Dr. Lila Chen leaned forward, her fingers flying over the keys. She was the cautious one, always double-checking trajectories, her mind a labyrinth of probabilities. "I've plotted a micro-jump to the nebula fringe, but it'll strain the engines. Risk of cascade failure is high, 28%, give or take." "High's better than dead," Elena replied, straightening up. She turned to the fourth member of their core team, Sergeant Kira Novak, who stood by the airlock hatch, rifle slung over her shoulder. Kira's bravery was the quiet sort, forged in the fires of frontier skirmishes, her presence a reminder that words alone wouldn't save them. "Novak, seal off the lower decks. If that pulse hits again, we can't afford hull breaches." Kira moved without a word, her boots thudding softly against the grated floor. As she worked the manual overrides, a low rumble shook the ship, vibrating up through Elena's soles. Alarms blared, a secondary wave incoming. "Brace!" Elena shouted, grabbing a handhold just as the deck tilted. Sparks erupted from a nearby panel, and Marcus dove to smother them with his extinguisher. The Vanguard shuddered, lights dimming to a bloody red. When the tremor subsided, Lila's voice emerged strained but precise. "Jump windows closing. We go now, or the Council's interceptors catch us in open space." Elena waited in an instant, jump blind into the nebula where sensors would fail and debris could shred them, or face the armada that had just declared humanity's triumph a farce, their departure a one-way ticket to oblivion. No speeches, no grand gestures. Just choice. "Engage the jump," she ordered. "Hale, give me everything you've got on those engines." Marcus grinned through the grime, flipping switches with practiced flair. "Aye, Cap. Let's show these Star-Lords what human grit looks like." The ship lurched forward, stars streaking into lines as the drive whined to life. But as they pierced the nebula's edge, a new alert pierced the din, structural integrity dropping. A microfracture in the core shielding, courtesy of the pulse. Elena's heart pounded, but her face remained stone. "Not yet," she muttered to herself, eyes locked on the viewport where swirling gases loomed like a graveyard shroud. The Council thought they'd won. Earth was leaving, but on their terms or not at all. Deeper into the nebula, visibility dropped to zero, the ship navigating by instruments alone. Lila's calculations kept them threading the needle, dodging plasma eddies that could melt durasteel. Marcus jury-rigged a bypass, his hands a blur, cursing in rhythmic Spanish under his breath. "Come on, you stubborn beast." A sudden jolt, debris impact. Kira was there in a flash, patching a hull alarm with sealant foam, her movements efficient, unyielding. Breach contained. For now. Elena's mind raced. The fracture was worsening. They needed a fix, not a patch. "Chin, any anomalies in the nebula readings? Something we can use." Lila's eyes widened behind her glasses. Wait, there's a magnetic pocket ahead. Unstable, but it could induce a field to stabilize the core. Like jump-starting a battery, but riskier. Riskier how? Elena pressed, already knowing the answer. Could fry the whole system if the polarity's off. Or pull us into a collapse. Elena glanced at her team, Marcus nodding grimly, Kira returning from the hatch with a determined set to her jaw. No arguments, no hesitation. This was the adaptation they needed, human ingenuity turning a hazard into a Hail Mary. Plot it, Elena said. We dive in. The Vanguard plunged toward the pocket, engines screaming. As they entered, the ship bucked wildly, electromagnetic forces clawing at the hull. Consoles sparked, and for a heart-stopping moment, everything went dark. Then, a surge, power flooding back, the core stabilizing with a resonant hum. They burst through, the nebula parting like a curtain, revealing open space beyond. Cheers erupted short and fierce. But Elena silenced them with a raised hand. Scanners lit, the dim hum of the shuttle's engines vibrated through the hull, a steady pulse that matched the rhythm of Jax's heartbeat. He gripped the armrest, his knuckles pale against the worn synth leather, as the viewport filled with the swirling blues and greens of Epsilon Prime's atmosphere. Below, the council spires gleamed like jagged teeth, but up here in the thinning air, everything felt smaller, less imposing. Jax glanced at Mira, who sat across from him, her eyes fixed on the NAV console, fingers dancing over the controls with the precision of someone who'd spent years defying gravity. You sure about this? Jax asked, his voice low, laced with the grit of doubt he'd carried since the declaration. The council had hailed their ingenuity, human grit turning the tide against the void storm that had threatened the core worlds, but triumph tasted bitter when it came with strings. Earth had voted to cut ties, to depart the alliance after centuries of uneasy partnership. No more sharing tech, no more bleeding for distant stars. Just homeward bound, consequences be damned. Mira didn't look up. We've run the sims 100 times. The rift's stable for another 48 hours. If we miss it, we're ghosts in the fleet. Her tone was cautious, the way it always got when stakes climbed too high, but there was steel beneath it. She'd been the one to jury-rig the storm shields, weaving human intuition with alien algorithms until the council chambers echoed with reluctant applause. Now that same ingenuity was their escape hatch. The shuttle bucked as a residual eddy from the storm caught them, tossing loose datapads across the deck. Jax lunged, snatching one before it clattered into the bulkhead. The screen flickered to life in his hand, schematics of the departure fleet, a ragtag armada of retrofitted haulers and fighters, all pointed toward the Soul Jump Gate. Captain Rhea's voice crackled over the comms from the lead vessel. All hands, this is Vanguard. Council's sending interceptors. They've declared our exit unilateral aggression. We punch through or we don't punch at all. Jax's jaw tightened. Aggression. After they'd saved the bastards from obliteration. He strapped the pad back down and met Myra's gaze. Her dark eyes held that witty spark, the one that had gotten them through a dozen scrapes on frontier outposts. They're scared, she said, a half-smile tugging her lips. We showed them what humans do when pushed. Now they want to pull us back in line. The first warning klaxon blared, red lights strobing across the cabin. On the viewport, specks resolved into the sleek forms of council enforcers. Angular ships with plasma lances primed, weaving through the clouds like predators scenting blood. Jax unbuckled, moving to the auxiliary station, his hands steady despite the adrenaline surge. Brave wasn't his natural state, it was what you became when caution failed. Arm countermeasures, he ordered, voice cutting through the din, and hail them. One last chance to back off. Mira nodded, flipping switches with fluid grace. The comms hissed open. Council vessels, this is Shuttle Echo 7, part of the Earth departure convoy. Stand down. We've earned this path. Static answered, then a cold, synthesized voice from the lead interceptor. Human contingent, your actions destabilize the Accord. Revert course or be neutralized. The shuttle shuddered as the first lance skimmed past, ionizing the air in a brilliant arc. Jax's stomach dropped, but he forced focus, plotting evasion vectors. Mira banked hard, the G-forces pinning them to their seats, and the world outside blurred into a vortex of storm remnants and enemy fire. "They're not listening," she muttered, sweat beading on her brow. "Reyes, we need that window now." From the fleet ahead, a chorus of engines roared to life, the armada forming a wedge to shield the stragglers. Jax watched as human-piloted drones, clever little beasts cobbled from scrap and spite, swarmed the interceptors, not with brute force but with feints and jams sowing chaos in the enemy's precise formations. One drone latched onto an enforcer's hull, its payload a burst of EMP that sent the alien ship spinning into the clouds. But the cost mounted quick. A hauler in the rear exploded in a silent bloom of fire, debris scattering like confetti. Jax's comms filled with shouts, pilots calling losses, engineers reporting hull breaches. "Lost the Mariner," someone barked. "She's venting Atmo." The weight of it pressed on him, real and raw, no glory in the grind. These weren't simulations, they were friends, crew who'd shared rations and stories under alien suns. Myra's plan kicked in then, the one she'd sketched on a napkin back on the station. Used the storm's magnetic echoes to mask their signature. She routed power to the baffles, the shuttle flickering like a ghost on sensors. The interceptors veered, confused, buying them precious seconds. Jax punched in the final coordinates, the rift's glow emerging on the scopes. A shimmering tear in space, humanity's ticket home. As they broke through the blockade, the fleet coalescing around them, Jax felt the tension uncoil just a fraction. Not victory, not yet, but adaptation. The Council's triumph had been theirs to claim. Now departure was the grit that defined it. Earth waited, vast and unyielding with its own storms brewing. But they'd face them together, scars and all. The shuttle surged forward, the rift swallowing them whole, leaving the Council's grasp behind in a fading echo of thunder. The shuttle's engines hummed a low, steady thrum as it broke free from the orbital dock, leaving the sprawling lattice of the Galactic Council station shrinking against the starfield. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, her knuckles still white from the final negotiations. Beside her, Dr. Raj Patel monitored the NAV console, his fingers dancing over holographic displays with the precision of someone who just outmaneuvered an interstellar bureaucracy. In the co-pilot seat, Lieutenant Kira Voss leaned back, her sharp eyes scanning the readouts, a faint smile cracking her usually stoic facade. "They're hailing us again," Kira said, her voice laced with dry amusement. "Probably the third counselor begging for one more data packet on our fusion tech." Elena shook her head, her dark hair catching the glow from the forward view screen. "Ignore it. We've given them enough miracles for one cycle. Let them figure out how to fix their own grid failures without us holding their hands." Raj glanced up, his brow furrowed in that cautious way of his, the one that had saved their team from more than one hasty decision during the crisis. The Council's energy matrix had been on the brink, solar flares amplified by a rogue asteroid field, threatening to black out half the core worlds. Earth's prototype stabilizers had turned the tide, but not without cost. A chunk of their own reserves depleted, and whispers of espionage from rival factions that had nearly derailed the whole effort. "Trajectory locked for Sol System," Raj confirmed, his tone steady despite the undercurrent of relief. "ETA to Mars relay, 12 hours. But, Elena, you sure about not looping back for that alliance vote? They declared triumph on our terms, but departure. It's a statement." She met his gaze, the weight of the choice settling like the pull of gravity they'd just escaped. The Council had hailed humanity's ingenuity as the galaxy's salvation, parading their engineers before holographic assemblies. Yet in the quiet aftermath, with the flares contained and the matrix humming anew, Earth had chosen independence over entanglement. No more sharing blueprints with species who hoarded their own secrets. No more risking human lives to patch alien oversights. It was grit over glory, camaraderie forged in the heat of the moment now carrying them home. Kiras Nortil, Itiosting here Honis. Statement? It's a mic drop. We fixed their mess, proved we're not just the upstart primates they thought. Now we build our own future without their red tape strangling it. The hail pinged again, insistent, but Elena waved it off. Through the viewport, the station's lights blurred into streaks as they accelerated, the vastness of space unfolding like a promise unclaimed. Back on the bridge logs, the Council's proclamation echoed, triumph for all. But here, in the shuttle's confines, the real victory hummed in the engines, human-made, human-driven, carrying them toward horizons untouched by decree. As the stars wheeled, Elena felt the lingering ache of what they'd left behind. Alliances frayed, resources stretched thin, and the galaxy a little wiser about the quiet strength of a species that chose to walk away whole. Raj plotted the course refinements, Kira ran diagnostics, and the shuttle sliced onward, a lone arrow pointing home.